Hi everyone. I hope you and your loved ones are staying safe and healthy amidst the current situation. I'm Rochelle Hanna, working as software quality engineer for Adobe ColdFusion. I've been working with this team for the past 2.5 years. In these past years, I have worked on integrating AWS S3 with ColdFusion. I've tested a number of ColdFusion frameworks. I've fixed accessibility bugs. I'm also the accessibility champion for the ColdFusion team. My hobbies are I sing, I play violin and guitar. I love traveling and trekking. I also like doing all kinds of adventurous sports like bungee jumping, parasailing, scuba diving, etc. My co speaker for this session is Megha. Over to you, Megha.
Hello everyone, my name is Megha and I work as a senior software engineer at ColdFusion Adobe. I've been working in the team for about 2.5 years now on features like PMT, SAML integration with ColdFusion 2021, and testing multiple features CF offers like REST services, lockdown for CF servers, WebSockets, and so on. My hobbies are singing, and I like to draw and paint, and I also enjoy going on treks. So that was about me. So this session today will be mainly about new features and enhancements we have for Performance Monitoring Toolset. Let's take a look at the agenda for today's session. We will first briefly have an overview of PMT, then take a look at its components, and how you can onboard your ColdFusion servers to PMT and communication among CF, PMT and Datastore so that those in the session who haven't worked with PMT before get an idea about PMT. And then we will be moving on to looking at the major enhancements that PMT has to offer. What is Performance Monitoring Toolset? Performance Monitoring Toolset is a monitoring suite which helps to gain insights on your CF server, its OS level information, system information, and how exactly your applications perform at runtime. So if you all have watched Squid Game, which has become really famous now, we have this black mask guy there who keeps monitoring all the activities that are done by their players, right? So PMT pretty much uses the similar concept in that perspective. So PMT continuously monitors your server and your applications and collects aspects of your ColdFusion server like runtime memory, CPU usage, network usage on the machine where your CF server is running, consumption of the databases, API calls, any external services your CF is interacting with in order to ensure increased stability. Now coming to the PMT components. So PMT has two components. One is PMT server, which runs on top of Undertow application server. And the second component is the data store, where all the data collected from the ColdFusion runtime are stored. And data store is based on Elasticsearch. The communication between PMT and the data store goes like this. The CF server that is being monitored by PMT pushes the data into the data store, and PMT server requests the data store for this data, and the data store sends the data to the PMT server as a response. And this data is then visible to you on the PMT dashboard. Now, in order for PMT to start monitoring your CF server, you will have to first go through the process of onboarding your ColdFusion servers to PMT. This process has two main steps. The first is the ColdFusion side of configuration, and the second is actually onboarding the CF server to PMT by having the PMT recognize your CF server by either using auto discovery or manual configuration method. So first we'll look at the ColdFusion side of configuration. And first things first, you should have ColdFusion installed. And now, as you would know, in ColdFusion 2021, we have different modules that one can download as per their requirement, which was done as a part of modularization. Now, in order to enable monitoring in PMT, the package which is named as pmtagent is a requirement in CF. So in case you're using a zip installation of CF, then by default, you wouldn't have most of the packages installed. So then you will have to first install the pmtagent package in your CF. Now we'll see how you can install this pmtagent package. So you could either do that through cfpm utility, which you can find within your CF installation bin location. And then you need to run the command install pmtagent. So this will install the pmtagent package for you. Or you could also use the package manager which we have in the CF administrator. So within the CF administrator page, we have a page which is called as package manager. Just go inside the package manager and find the pmtagent package there and click on install. And that will install the pmtagent package for you. So now once you have the package installed in CF admin page, you can navigate to a page which is called as Performance Monitoring Toolset, which looks like this. So this is what the Performance Monitoring Toolset page looks like. And as you can see here, it has two main information. That is the server name and the monitoring shared secret key. So these are the two things that PMT will require in order to identify your CF server and start monitoring it. If your CF server is not already configured with any PMT, then you will see this red cross here, which indicates the same. Now, say your CF server has been configured with PMT successfully, then this red cross is going to change to a green tick mark, as well as you will find the link to the PMT dashboard in the CF admin page itself. So now that we have seen the CF side of configuration, now we move on to the PMT side and see how to onboard this CF server there. So in order to configure CF with PMT, we have two simple ways. One is auto discovery and the second is a manual configuration. So what happens with auto discovery is that PMT will look for all the ColdFusion instances that are on the same network and then enlist all of those. So we use multicasting in order to discover the CF servers. So if you have multicasting enabled, you can go with the auto discovery method. So for this, once you log into PMT dashboard and you get the screen that you are seeing here. So here you need to select the option auto discovery. So once you choose the auto discovery option, your PMT will start searching and it will enlist all of the CF servers that it finds. Then you just have to choose the CF servers that you are willing to monitor from that list. And this completes your onboarding process with auto discovery. Now say you do not want to have multicasting enabled for some security reasons, then you can go with the manual configuration. So as you saw in that first page, we have a skip option. So if you're going with the manual configuration, you need to give a skip there. And then simply provide the details that we saw earlier on the CF admin page. That is the server name, monitoring shared secret key, and the port number on which your CF is running. So once you provide that details, just click on add and this completes your onboarding process. So as we see, onboarding process is pretty simple. And once PMT starts monitoring a CF server, it will start showing up the data on the dashboard like this. So as you can see, the page you're seeing here is the overview page, which is a landing page. And these options that we see on the left, they open up different pages which show a lot of data around connectors, CF server, databases, incoming and external services, cloud services, and so on. So now let's take a look at how CF, PMT, and Datastore talk to each other. So as we already saw, PMT will have to first recognize a CF server by either auto discovery or manual configuration. So once that is successful, then PMT will send the Datastore details like IP and the port where the Datastore is running to CF so that CF can start talking to the Datastore. Because CF will always communicate or send data directly to the Datastore. Now the CF, after it has recognized and gotten the information about the Datastore, it will send all its configuration related data to the Datastore like its operating system information, JVM information, and so on. After that, it will start pushing all the runtime and monitoring data to the data store. Now all this data will be fetched by the PMT server from the data store and then displayed on the dashboard. So I hope we have a good overview on how PMT exactly works. So now we will be moving on to the major enhancements that we have in PMT. So here we have a user, and let's say he has built a lot of applications on CF and is now using PMT for monitoring his CF related and application related data. So let's see what he has to say. So here he says that PMT will be capturing vital information about my servers and storing it in the data store. Hence, I want to configure TLS or SSL and authentication for the data store. But how do I do that? So as we have seen in PMT, all the data is stored in the data store. That is, all the vital information about your CF servers are being collected and stored in the data store. Now with having such vital information, it becomes necessary to provide an end-to-end encryption, which is why we have this enhancement made in order to have authentication and SSL support in the data store. Now in order to achieve this, you will have to make some changes to your ElasticSearch, to your PMT and your JVM. Now first take a look at how we can enable authentication support in the data store. So we have mentioned the steps here. So the first step would be to install XPack. So first you need to go to your PMT installation location, Datastore folder bin, and then run ElasticSearch plugin install XPack. So XPack is basically an ElasticSearch extension that provides security, alerting, monitoring, reporting, machine learning, and many other capabilities. So after you're done installing XPack, start your data store, and then you need to run datastore.bat or sh file, which is present inside your bin folder. And when it asks if your data store uses authentication, you need to give a yes and then restart your PMT server. So this completes enabling authentication for your data store. So now as you can see, I'm trying to access the data store through the browser. So when I'm doing that, it is prompting me for the username and password. So this shows that the authentication has been enabled for your data store. Now moving on to the SSL support for the data store. So here the first step would be to install XPack, the same as what we saw in the authentication part. And the next step would be to modify elasticsearch.yml file. So elasticsearch.yml file will be present inside a Datastore config folder. You will have to add your certificate details there and then restart your data store. Also, you need to make sure that these certificates that you have provided there have been added to your Java key store that is being used by ColdFusion as well as PMT. Now, the third step here would be to run datastore.bat file. So here, you need to give yes for the data store running over SSL and provide the username and password and then restart your PMT server. And here, as you can see, I'm trying to access the data store through the browser, and it is running on top of HTTPS as well as it is prompting me for the username and password. So this shows that SSL has been enabled for your data store. Now we'll be moving on to our next enhancement. So here we have another user. So he says that my PMT server has been monitoring huge number of CF servers for a long time, and it now has huge amount of data that is stored and taking up a lot of system space. How do I get this data cleared using PMT? Now, as a solution to the issue we saw here, We have a second enhancement, that is data deletion from the data store along with the scheduler. So in settings, we have introduced a new page called as Datastore. So this is what the page looks like. And in here, you can see that all the data are based on indices which are grouped by date. That is, in one index, there will be data collected of that entire day. So with data being stored in this way, if you want to delete some of the data to free up your system space, you can do so by deleting some of your request indices for the data store. You could also delete a specific index from the list by clicking on the delete action that is adjacent to the particular index. Or let's say you want to delete data that is older than a particular number of days automatically without your manual intervention. You can do that as well by enabling the scheduler. So by default, the value for the data deletion scheduler is 7 and the frequency is 1 day. And the data deletion scheduler is disabled by default. So here, if you want it enabled, you need to first enable the scheduler, provide the frequency to run the scheduler, as well as how much older data you want deleted. So based on these values, the scheduler will run and delete the data which is older than the specified amount of days. So moving on to our next enhancement here. So this user says that I have awful lot of alerts in my alerts page, but I do not have an option to clear them. How do I get this issue resolved? So to get this issue resolved, we have added the page called as alert deletion option. Alerts is one of the major functionalities that PMT provides, where you can have preset conditions which when are met raises an alert and notifies the user. The benefit of this is that based on the conditions that are indicators of a problem to the user, he can set the alerts and take required actions on them as soon as he gets notified. Or he could also set a custom CFC to be run whenever the alert is triggered. So this CFC also lets you provide your own automated response to an alert condition. Now, for example, let's say that once your CPU usage exceeds about 95%, you know that it is going to cause performance issues for you. Then you simply set this condition in the PMT alert section. Now, whenever your CPU usage is going above 95%, you will be notified. And if you have mail server configuration done, you will receive an email notification as well. And if you have a Slack configuration done, you will get a Slack notification as well. So there are various different conditions for which you can set PMT alerts. So over time, naturally, in the notification page, you will have a huge number of alerts that have been raised. But earlier, we didn't have an option to clear them. Hence, we got the request to provide option to clear the alerts that have been raised. So as you can see, this is the page that is alert notification page. So now here we have options to delete single alerts by clicking on the delete option there, or select multiple alerts and delete them, or you could also choose to clear all the alerts that have been raised so far. So another enhancement which we will see today is having configurable non-request data collection frequency, shard and replica count, and the refresh interval. So first coming to the non-request data collection frequency. So PMT mainly collects two types of data, request data and non-request data. So request data is what PMT collects on a request basis. That is, if there is any request that is going through the CF server, then PMT will capture it. And the other request type, that is the non-request data, is something that PMT collects every 5 seconds by default. This data consists of mainly system CPU usage, memory, network input-output, disk input-output, JVM related data, and so on. So this frequency of 5 seconds, we have now made configurable to users. So you have an option to set a value for it. And we have also made shard and replica counts configurable. So what is shard? Shard is basically partitions of your data which helps in load distribution. And a replica count is the number of copies of shard. So earlier we had a default value of 5 shards and 3 replicas, but now we have brought down the values to 3 shards and 0 replicas by default, and these values are configurable as well to users as per their requirements. Now similarly, we have also made refresh interval configurable. That is the interval in which the data will be fetched onto the PMT UI. By default, refresh interval is 1 second, and now this value is configurable as well. Now, where do I set these values? So we have a configuration file which is called as application.properties, where you can make the changes you require for your PMT server. This has entries with the values for the fields we just saw. So here you can choose to set a value if required and then restart your PMT server. So to set a value for non-request data collection frequency, you need to make changes to the value of non-request task interval here in the image that you can see here. And for shard and replica count, we have datastore.requestindex.replica count and datastore.requestindex.shard count. And similarly for refresh interval, the changes need to be made to datastore.requestindex.refresh interval. Now moving on to our next enhancement. So in PMT 2021, we have added features for capturing a lot of data around CF threads, which is where we got requests to do the same for async threads as well. So to monitor currently active requests, queries, CF threads, we have a section called as active monitoring in PMT. So this is what the active monitoring page looks like in PMT Dashboard. So now here we have also added async threads to it so that you can monitor the number of threads that are running in an async operation. So the drop down you see there on the top, I have already selected async threads there, so you can see data around it. It enlists all the active async threads along with the details on them. And there are some actions that you can take on them as well. That is, you can view the Java stack trace of the thread for a particular request. And the other action that you can take is to kill the active async thread. So in the side under the action there, you have both of them, Java stack, to view the Java stack trace as well as to kill the active async thread. So as you can see here, we have a graph as well for async thread metrics added. So in the CF server page in PMT, we have a graph that shows the running threads and the queued counts of async threads along with the CF threads. Now similarly, we have also added an option in the drop-down for sessions, and we collect data around the active sessions as a part of this enhancement. So this will show us the details on currently active sessions. And as you can see here, we have also added a graph which will show you the active and expired session counts over the selected period of time. Okay, so we have another user here. And this user here wants to update his PMT to the latest released version. So as you would know, ColdFusion updates can be applied through the updates page that we provide within the administrator. And each time an update is released, you can just go to the updates page, download or install the update from there itself, which is pretty simple. But in case of PMT, earlier we would have the updates bundled within ColdFusion, and you need to pick it from there and then apply it to your PMT. But now we have removed that dependency, and we have update workflow for PMT as well, which you can find within settings page in the PMT dashboard. So this is what the page looks like. So in the settings, we have a page called as updates, and within that updates page, we have 3 sections. First is the available updates, and then second is installed updates, and the third is the settings page. So in the available updates, you can see all of the updates that are currently available for you. That is all the updates that are of higher level than what you are currently on. You will be able to see there, and you have an option to either download or download and install it. So what download does is it downloads and places the file inside your PMT home HF updates folder, and you can install it later. And download and install option, it downloads the hotfix and performs a silent installation for you. And the second section we have is the installed updates. So in installed updates, you will be able to see the latest update that you have currently applied. And at the bottom, you can also see there is an option to uninstall it. So if you click on that, that update will get uninstalled. And the third page we have here is the settings page. So here we have first the checkbox, which if you enable it, each time you log into PMT, it will automatically check for the update if it is available. And the second notification option there, you can choose to have mail configuration done and enable that notification section. You will be getting a notification whenever an update gets released. And we have update site URL here. So if you set up a local update site, you can also specify the URL for that site to get the updates. And then lastly, we have proxy settings. So if you're installing your updates through a proxy server, you can simply provide the details of that proxy server here and then perform the download or installation process, and that will be possible too. So all of these enhancements that we saw so far are present in both PMT 2018 and PMT 2021. So if you have the latest versions of either PMT 2018 or 2021 with you, you will be able to see all of these enhancements. So now we will be moving on to the cloud monitoring using PMT, which will be taken up by Rochelle. Over to you, Rochelle.
I'll be talking about one of the major enhancements done in PMT 2021, that is cloud monitoring. First, let's see what cloud computing and cloud monitoring is. So cloud computing is the delivery of different services through the internet. So these resources include tools and applications like data storage, servers, databases, networking, and software. Now, what's cloud monitoring? As you can see in this image, cloud monitoring is a method of reviewing, observing, and managing the operational workflow in a cloud-based IT infrastructure. So why do we need cloud monitoring? In our application, we might have more than one cloud service, and these are public services. So it's important for us to monitor this interaction between our application and the public service. The reason it's important is for us to know which public service might cause latency in our application. So here's the list of cloud features that are supported by ColdFusion 2021. In cloud storage, we have AWS S3 and Azure Blob. In messaging service, we have AWS SQS, AWS SNS, and Azure Service Bus. In cloud database, we have AWS DynamoDB. To learn more about AWS Cloud with Adobe ColdFusion 2021, you can attend the talk by George Murphy at 11:40 a.m. PT. Using ColdFusion, we can access these set of cloud features, and the same can be monitored using PMT. Now, before getting into that, anyone might have this question like, why do we need PMT to monitor cloud operations when there are other cloud monitoring tools available? So here are some points why I think PMT is better option for ColdFusion users when compared to other cloud monitoring tools. So the level or extent PMT can monitor is more compared to other cloud monitoring tools, because other monitoring tools are external to ColdFusion. So they will have some limitations while monitoring. Also, other cloud monitoring tools mainly focus on monitoring cloud operations. But in an enterprise application, it's not just the cloud operations, but there might be other operations related to database or external services. So all these operations can be monitored together in one platform using PMT. So PMT not only monitors the cloud request, but it also captures the networking lag present in the cloud operations. PMT was developed by developers of ColdFusion. So they had a better perspective on what CF users require, and it was developed accordingly. Now let's see how to get started. So we have our Red Soldier here who is working on ColdFusion project where he will be using different services like cloud, external services, SQL, NoSQL databases or ColdFusion admin. But as you can see, he doesn't want to monitor all of them. Maybe he thinks it's too much of information to be stored. So he can use advanced monitoring to monitor only the services that he wants. This option is present in Settings page under the Monitoring tab. Here he can select the services he wants to monitor. So this feature has been enhanced with Cloud Service and NoSQL database monitoring in PMT 2021. And to enable Cloud Service monitoring, you also need to enable tag or function monitoring. Now in future, if our Red Soldier decides he doesn't want to monitor all the requests that's coming across, but only want the ones whose response time is above 100 or 200 milliseconds, he can do that by giving the request time threshold in milliseconds, the requests below which won't be captured. This feature of monitoring requests based on their response time has been backported to PMT 2018. Now, since we have seen how to get started, let's go to the Cloud Services Overview page. So it's the ninth icon in the navigation menu. So first things first, one of my favorite thing in PMT is how it looks, like the UI. As you can see, it's so beautiful, filled with colors. So this page contains the graph with average response time for each service, where we can see which service has the longer response time compared to the others. Then we have API invocation, which basically contains the number of API calls done for each cloud service. Then we have top slow services, where you can see the list of cloud services with the total number of API invocation and the average time taken for each service. And last, we have the service distribution graph, which is based on the total number of invocations for each of the cloud service. Let's see the first cloud service, that is AWS S3. So S3 is a cloud storage service provided by Amazon where you can store your files and data in the buckets. So buckets are like directories in file system. You can store any kind of files in here. And the files that you store in buckets are called as objects. Now let's see a few operations that I'll be performing on AWS S3 using ColdFusion 2021. So if you aren't using ColdFusion 2021 full installer, you might first want to install the AWS S3 package either from Package Manager in cfadmin or using cfpm utility file. So the same needs to be done for other cloud services before performing any operations using ColdFusion. So in the sample code present here, first we will be creating a S3 storage object using getCloudService method. So here I'm passing AWS credentials to this method. So once I get my S3 storage object, I can use this to perform operations on AWS S3. Next, I'm creating a bucket named as cfsummit.bucket using this bucket method. So this command over here creates a bucket if it's not already present. And the method returns the bucket object. So using this bucket object, I will be uploading a file to AWS S3. For that, I'll be using upload file method, which takes a struct with source file location and object key name. I'm giving the key name as key123. So once I'm done uploading the file to my bucket, I'm listing all the objects present inside the bucket using listAll method. And when I run this sample code, this is the output that I get. Here I'm dumping the list of objects present in the bucket, which is key123. Now let's monitor the same using PMT. So here you have the graphs for average response time, API invocation and top slow operations. It's like the overview page, but here it's only for AWS S3. And the top slow operations list the APIs that were called, whereas in overview page it was the list of cloud services. Then we have the bucket distribution, where the bucket is displayed based on the number of times APIs used a particular bucket object. So we can hover on these buckets and see the exact number of times it was used by the APIs. Over here we have our cf submit.bucket, which we created using the sample code. The number of API count is 2. So coming back to the example, here the bucket object is used twice. So first was to upload the file and the second was to list the objects in the bucket. So that is why we have this count 2. Next, we can click on a bucket and see the URLs that used the particular bucket object. We can also see the application name and the total response time for the URL. Then we can drill it down further and check the cloud APIs that were used in that URL. So here under the cloud services, we can see the list of all the APIs. Similarly, we have object distribution, where the objects are displayed based on the number of times APIs have used them. We have this object key123, which was just used once during upload file operation. So even here we can check all the URLs that used the objects. Then we have action distribution, which displays all the APIs and the number of times it was called. By clicking on this, we can see the exact URLs that use them. The last graph present in this page is for success failure distribution, which is for the number of APIs that executed successfully or failed. Here we can check the error that had occurred by clicking on this failed APIs. We can open this URL and go to the error or timeout section and get the exact error. Then we can fix it accordingly. Now that we have seen what all can be monitored in AWS S3 using PMT, let's move on to other cloud services. So all these cloud services share a common layout which contains graph for average response time, API invocation, top slow operations, action distribution, and success failure distribution. I will just be talking about the ones that are different compared to AWS S3. So here we have Azure Blob, which is again a cloud storage service which is provided by Microsoft Azure. So here, instead of buckets, it's containers. We have this container distribution, which is based on the number of times APIs use a container object. Then we have AWS SQS, that's Simple Queue Service, which is a queuing service that stores messages that applications or microservices use. A message is usually stored in the queue until another service consumes the message and performs some operation. We have queue distribution, where the queue is displayed based on the number of times APIs have used that particular queue object. Then we have AWS SNS, that's Simple Notification Service, which is a cloud-based service for managing push messages from applications to subscribing endpoints and clients. So here you first create a topic, which is an access point for subscribers to receive notification. You publish a message to a topic when you have an update for subscribers and the subscribers are going to receive it. We have topic distribution where the topic is displayed based on the number of times APIs have used a particular topic. Then there is subscription distribution. It's the list of subscription ARNs, that is Amazon resource names. So here it's the number of times APIs used a particular subscription. Next up is Azure Service Bus, which is a fully managed enterprise message broker with message queues and published subscribe topics. It has queues, which is used to store the messages until the receiving application is available to receive and process them. It also has topics that can be used in publish subscribe scenarios. So in PMT, as you can see, we can monitor both queue distribution and topic distribution together. So previously in ColdFusion, we just had relational databases. But in ColdFusion 2021, you can store and retrieve data from NoSQL databases. So one among which is DynamoDB. It is a fully managed, serverless, key-value NoSQL database designed to run high-performance application at any scale. And to monitor the same, we have these following graphs. Over here, the action distribution is not the list of APIs, but the actions that are performed on the table, like read and write operations. Then we have exception distribution, which, as the name says, it's a graph with all the exceptions that have come across. So this was cloud service monitoring using PMT. Now what I showed was for few operations that were performed on cloud services. But in an enterprise application, there will be a lot of operations that are performed. So it's important for the user to monitor these services regularly and check if anything has failed or if any service is causing latency in the application. So there is another NoSQL database that was integrated with ColdFusion 2021, that is MongoDB, which is a cross-platform document-based NoSQL database. We can monitor it in the sixth icon over here. The layout over here is like the ones we saw in cloud services, just that the database distribution over here is different, where it's for the number of times the functions use the database. Well, this brings me to the end of the session. To sum up, first we looked at what PMT is and how it monitors ColdFusion server. Then we saw the two PMT components, that is PMT server and Datastore. Next was the process of onboarding ColdFusion to PMT. We also saw the communication between ColdFusion, PMT and the Datastore. Then we went through the major enhancements in PMT such as authentication in ElasticSearch, SSL support on Datastore, scheduled data deletion from Datastore and update workflow. We also saw advanced monitoring where we could select the services that we want to monitor. Then we started with the cloud service monitoring where I showed how to monitor AWS S3 with the sample code. We also saw how Azure Blob, AWS SQS, AWS SNS, Azure Service Bus, AWS DynamoDB, and NoSQL database MongoDB can be monitored using PMT. These are the resources that you can use to install and deploy PMT on your servers. Also, you can use the info button present in the PMT dashboard, which will take you to the documentation of the respective features. I hope this session was informative and it helped you to get a good idea on the new features and enhancements that PMT has to offer. Any questions that you might have are welcome now. Thank you and stay safe.